verse 26. We're now looking at man as male and female. Man as male and female. Verse 26 says, then God said, let us make man, singular, in our own image, after our likeness, and let them, plural, have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and all the livestock, and over the earth, all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So do you notice, God determines to create man, and then considers man as them. So already you begin to notice that man is looked at both in the singular but also in the plural. I think you see a similar phenomenon with God in Genesis 1 and throughout in a different sense. So the singleness of man and the plurality of man is going to be worked out in verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So the word man there obviously can be used or can be understood in two ways. When the Bible uses the word man, it can either be used generically, generally, as a reference to mankind, and neither gender is prominent, just mankind. But then there are other places where the context requires that we understand the word man to be referring particularly to the male gender. Yeah, but both are possible. So sometimes the Bible uses the word man for mankind. Sometimes it uses the word man for the male gender. So God determines to create mankind is a general thought here. He determines to create mankind in his own image. And he determines to create mankind in the image of God as both male and female. There's a lot packed in there. God determines to create mankind. Mankind is created in the image of God. Then mankind exists as male and female. Now, what comes across here, first and foremost, is the equality of the genders, isn't it? Is the equality of the gender. Because everything God does here is very deliberate. Is the male man the image of God? Is it? Is it? Is the female man the image of God? Yes. So, both male and female share in God's image. So if you kill a man, a male, you've attacked the image of God. If you kill a female, you've attacked the image of God. Do you see an equality there? Yeah. So there's an equality in terms of God creates mankind to be both male and female, and both share in the divine image. Therein is an essential equality. Okay? So I think we need to begin there. Then God blessed them. So the blessing is equally on both, isn't it? Yeah. I think the New Testament way in which it is expressed in 1 Peter 3 is that men live with your wives according to knowledge. And then it is saying that we are joint heirs with them of the grace of life, something like that. So there are certain blessings that we share jointly. God blessed them. Then God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion. So there's a sense in which man and woman, male and female, are to exercise dominion over the rest of creation together. Okay? And God designed it that way. As it were, the king rules with the queen alongside him. Okay? Yeah. But I'm just showing you some areas of essential equality. So it is not illegitimate to say that in those senses, both male and female are equal. Because they are. They are both the image of God. Blessed by God. Commissioned by God. To be fruitful, multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it. So we normally say then here that in terms of creation, generally man and woman are equally God's image. Yeah. They are equally God's image. Now we go to study here because sometimes, I think always, there is a skewed way of construing biblical patriarchy. Yeah. You can misunderstand the biblical concept of the headship of the man. And you can say, oh, because man is the head, and therefore the woman is useless and needless. Yeah. And we can do with the woman as we please. No, we can't think like that. The Bible teaches that God made man and woman in his image. God gave them dominion to rule over the rest of creation together. And I think there's a sense which, if you look at the wordings of Genesis 1, as pertains to the creation of man especially, all that is said there about man is said to and of both male and female. Yeah. I'm simply establishing a fundamental equality here. Just in case someone might be tempted to misunderstand what we will say afterwards to mean that biblical patriarchy implies that women have no place in God's purposes, or even in the church, or even in the family. Or that this sort of implies some essential inferiority. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. Yeah. So there's an equality there. Man and woman equal by the deliberate design of God in creation as both being sharers and bearers, therefore, of the divine image. But even right now, staying with chapter 1, there are allusions. Having established that fundamental equality, there are clear allusions to some kind of ordering, isn't it? Yes, some kind of order. So, when the relation is put forward in verse 27, God created man in his own image, in the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. So, man takes the precedent. It's mentioned first. So there's an allusion there. There's an allusion there. But that just gives us the general view of man and woman as they are viewed in God's presence. There is an essential equality of nature both sharers of the image of God, both have the mandate that is given to them. Yet there's an allusion to some kind of ordering there. So, chapter 2, like I said, is what gives details to what we see in chapter 1. And the details of what we see in chapter 1 has to do with, okay, how was mankind created? Now we begin to see some definite order. Even though Genesis 1 tells us that let us make man generic in our image, male and female. But when the actual account of the blow-by-blow process is set forward in chapter 2, we see then that God creates the male first, isn't it? Yeah, God creates the male first. And that's what we find in verse 7. So God formed the man. We know that is referring to the male man, because the creation of the female man is not going to happen until, in fact, it's not going to be mentioned until after verse 19, isn't it? Yeah. So what we see created out of the dust of the ground is the male. God created Adam first. Now, does the rest of the Bible leverage on that to explain the relationships between man and woman? Do we find that in the New Testament, for example? Yeah. So, in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 to 15, where Paul is now going to talk about order in the church. He's going to talk about order in the church, and he's going to say that I do not permit a woman to teach. So it is the clear command in the New Testament that women are not to teach. Men particularly, they are not to teach men. Yeah. Because the word goes, I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man. And we ask Paul, why? But sometimes we don't ask Paul why. We offer a repartee instead. Yeah. We answer back to him. Paul, you don't understand. This is because there were particular problems in the church at Ephesus or in the church at Corinth. Women are misbehaving in some way, so Paul is reining in misbehavior. So Paul gives a reason, doesn't he, as to why women are not permitted to teach or to exercise authority over a man. So what reason does Paul give? You know it, don't you? Mm-hmm. He says, so let a woman learn quiet with all submissiveness. Verse 12, I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. Why? Verse 13, for Adam was formed first, then Eve. Now, if we're reading only Genesis, and we see Adam being created first, and then Eve coming along later, we might think, oh, this is merely incidental. It could have happened any other way, just that God wanted somewhere to start. Now, Paul tells us, God did it on purpose. Yeah. And when God did that on purpose, he was establishing a certain order in the relation between the two. So what Paul is telling us here is, by God creating Adam first, he was setting him up as the leader. Okay? Yeah. He is setting up Adam as the leader. That's why he was made first. So that's the first argument. So notice, he doesn't place it to misbehavior of something, unruly women. Or, these are prudential arrangements after the fall. God is trying to organize the world after the fall. Like people talk about polygamy or even, divorce. No. Before the fall, sin has not arrived. And God already determined that there will be a particular order. That's argument number one that Paul offers. And then it says, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived. What in the world does that mean? I think among other things it means, it alludes to the subtlety of the enemy, where the direct is attack. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, we could make a number of arguments, but among other things is Paul may be alluding to the fact that the enemy in the initial temptation moved to try and undermine the divinely instituted order. It was very deliberate. It seems to me that was his first line of attack. Challenge the order. And he did. And he succeeded. Okay? Adam was not deceived, but Eve was. I think in a sense then, another thing that is alluded to here is that in one way or another, the devil knew where to go, right? For what reason, again, I can't tell. But he knew what he was doing. Deceived. He targeted me. Of course, some have argued, I think maybe rightly, that Adam was not deceived. It says that when Adam was eating the fruit, he was not under any illusions. He knew exactly what was happening. So bait, But anyways, the whole point I'm making at this point at least is that Paul is arguing that there is an order that was established by God at creation, and which it became the subject of the enemy's attack, even at the beginning. And we can say other things, but at least that can be deduced from the text. So then, you notice, Adam being created first is a big deal. God is saying something. I'm making him first, and by so doing, I'm establishing him as a leader. So in terms of the outworking of creation, the man has priority. First, of being created ahead of the woman. Let's keep looking. There's a clear intention by God to give to Adam a prophetic role within the family, to set him up as the prophetic head of the family. Isn't it interesting that God creates Adam, and then God sets him up in the garden, and then God gives him the command in verse 15. All this prior to the creation of Eden. Yeah. All this prior to the creation of Eve. Now the assumption ordinarily would be that Adam would have the responsibility then of ordering his family after him, leading his wife. Remember when God visits Abraham in Genesis 18, and he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham and his wife, they welcome the angels warmly. And as the angels leave, they ask him, shall we not tell Abraham what we are about to do? Seeing that he's been chosen by God, that he will order his household after him. So who orders the household? In that case, it's Abraham. Now, what's the name of Abraham's wife? Sarah. Sarai was there, but we're not told that she would order her household. Or we're not even told that she and her husband would order the household. No, it is Abraham who would order. And that is alluded to even here. All the rules, all the stipulations in God's good wisdom and providence are laid out for Adam prior to the arrival of his wife. It is implied there that it will be up to him to guide, direct his wife. Of course, we're not free to make any allusions that Eve was inferior. But God ordered it that way. God ordered it that way. So again, the headship of the man is set out not only in his being created first, but at least from the flow of Genesis 2, the instructions from God are given to him while he's alone. So we keep reading them. Then in verse 18, God says it's not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Mm-hmm. So you notice this. The Bible is very clear that Eve was created for Adam. Not Adam for Eve. One is a help meet for the other. The other is the leader who is to be helped. Makes sense? So all this is deliberate, it's planned, it's not accidental, organized, thought, playing out in real time. So if the woman is created for the man, not the man for the woman, we find that also stated in the New Testament. For the man, for the woman was created for the man, and not the man for the woman. So do you see, when the New Testament organizes the church, and the organization of the church in the New Testament is binding on us, isn't it? Yeah. The ordering of the church in terms of woman cannot be pastor and man alone can be. These are not Old Testament. This is New Testament. And the New Testament apostles, as they lay down that order, where are they pointing us to? The intention of God from the beginning, even before the fall, was that where man and woman is, the man leads, and the woman helps. That's God. So there's no apologizing for it. Why should we apologize for it? Let's just apologize for God. God cannot apologize for what he does, and we should apologize to for God for what he's doing. That's his purpose, that's his will. And if anybody wants to question that, we have to ask him, who are you, O man, to answer back to God? God owes us no explanation, does he? Yeah. Because in Romans 9, where Paul uses those tough words, Paul is basically arguing that God has chosen those who are saved from the foundations of the world, isn't it? And he has passed over others and left them to die in their sins. And Paul is anticipating, oh, is this fair? Oh, why does he still blame us and take us to hell if he didn't choose us? And Paul, having given a number of arguments, said, let's talk with the arguments. Let's talk with the answers. Who are you to ask God those questions? God is doing what he's doing, and you're there asking him questions? That's not Paul, isn't it? I think we can say that here. We can argue for male headship unapologetically, because this is the purpose of God. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a TV in your house? In the radio? Do you? Have you ever complained? Why does the radio have pictures? Have you ever complained? No. Why? Because the one who created those things has every right to make one for this purpose and another for different purpose. And that's how we made it. So if we cannot question Panasonic, you cannot question Samsung, you cannot question LG, why they made a radio without pictures and they make a TV with pictures, you dare question God as to why he made a man to lead? What are you doing? I think mankind in its arrogance requires sometimes such tough questions. Yeah. Assert and affirm the sovereignty of God, God's right to do what he pleases. And if something in you resents that, there's a big problem, a huge problem. I'm serious.
You have an answer for that?
No, we don't. I don't want any answer. I'm telling you now. Okay? I'm telling you. Look, I want this thing to be as strong as possible. I'm showing you what God the Creator is doing. Let me ask, let's go back. Yeah, let's go back. No. Wait. I want this to sink in. And it should sink deeply. Is this God working? Is it God? Thank you. Even if you didn't say yes. Let's go to Genesis 1. And let's see what God does with the rest of creation. And remember we said man is a created. And no part of creation ever questions what God does and why he does it. And then somehow this little one can chase it. Okay, look at Genesis 1. So verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then, and God saw that light was good, and God separated light from darkness. Have you ever heard darkness complain? Oh God, why did you say Mimi Domzuri? Have you ever heard darkness complain? You've never heard. Because God is doing his thing. He has created light, he's separating it from darkness. God decides darkness is bad and light is good. And that's it. God called the light day and the darkness he called night. There was evening, there was day. And then verse 6, and God says, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. So God has water, all is water. All is water. And then God separates water from water. So there's no difference in substance. No difference in substance. Same H2O. But God says, out of the same H2O, I want this H2O to exist up there. And I want this other H2O to exist down here. And the one there is now called the heavens, the clouds. Did you ever hear Indian Ocean complaining, why did you put me there? No, the Creator is doing his thing. Okay? He's doing his thing. Now, even the waters on the earth, now God gathers them. Gathers some, becomes oceans. Others become seas. Others become lakes. And others become rivers. And is it? Oceans are greater than seas. And then seas are greater than lakes, generally. And then rivers are smaller than. Have you ever had a river complaining? Why did you make me only a river? Surely you should give me more water from the ocean. You don't hear it. Creation simply bowing to the will of the Creator. And here we are. Look, we could go on. Sometimes it makes you angry, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, there's some things you can't even question me when I do. I mark your work. I don't hear you guys complaining. And sometimes I write very tough comments. And then, God, you want to complain. I'm looking at you. Because you seem to have questions.
You know, when you're starting to explain this,
yes.
It's very cool.
Yes, I'm agitated. I'm very agitated. Look, I'm agitated because... Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The way we started it in Genesis.
Yes.
You're coming really good.
Yes, and then now equality is disappearing.
You are coming now through the word.
But the point is this. God established certain areas of equality between man and woman, and we're happy, right? Yeah. I was coming there too. Oh, praise the Lord. Image of God. And then God creates areas of distinction, and then our feet are out. You see why I'm kind of apoplectic, to borrow as this prone word again. Yeah. That the creature, listen, my point is that the creature can look at what God has done and question it. Surely. Yeah. Anyways, what God is doing here with man and woman, he has done before the rest of creation. Arbitrarily, by sheer fiat, determining for the creature what the creature would be. And he owes the creature no explanation, whatever. And all of creation bows. And then this one that is made in God's image, this one. Let's go back to our text. I'm trying to show you that God is deliberate. He is setting up an order between man as male and man as female. And he is clearly and deliberately determining that the man will be the head. Creates him first, gives him the law. He creates the woman for the man and not the other way round. Okay, so verse 21. The Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs, closed up its place with the flesh, and the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman. So not only is the woman created after man and created for the man, she is created from the man. Hata kama wewe ndio, you are visually impaired. Can't you see what God is doing? Can't you see?
The raw material stems from man.
So, woman is created from man, after man, for man, from man. And that's not all. Married into a woman and brought her to the man. Again, it is not the man to the woman. It is the woman to the man. And then verse 23. It is not the woman who opens her mouth first. It is the man who speaks. You see, he's the prophet of the house. This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of a man. And the point is that the man takes the lead in defining that. So, thinking God's thoughts after God, the man defines the woman. I'm not saying he's defining the woman arbitrarily. I'm saying he is thinking God's thoughts after God. He is borrowing from what God is already doing, and then he is defining. He recognizes, this one came from me. Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. And you don't see, he'll say, no, I don't quite like that name, honey. No, she doesn't say that. No, she doesn't say that. So she called her woman because she was taken out of man. Okay. Now, so far so good for the man who thinks that, oh, this means I am now, you know, and they misuse the authority. Verse 24 begins to tell us what the implications of this is. The man must sacrifice himself wholly and entirely for his woman. So when it comes to leaving father and mother, it's not even the woman. Though maybe it is implied, but the exact word is, the man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. Now, you see what the implications for the man are going to be. Obviously, the implications for the woman are clear. The woman is to submit, isn't it? Yeah. All this is calling on the woman to submit to the man. Don't usurp. Don't disobey. Don't rebel. Okay? And then, one of the first things that are going to be demanded of the man is sacrifice. In a sense here, all these painful cutting offs of these essential familial links are directly associated with man. There's the sacrifice. So in the family relations, you will notice throughout, even in the New Testament, Ephesians 5:25, okay, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up. So the sacrifice is fundamentally demanded of the man. Mm-hmm. At least we find here. Now, obviously, we can then hark back to what has gone before. So that it's not just a sacrifice, but there are other responsibilities arising from the fact of man's headship. He is going to be the leader of his wife. He is going to show his wife what God said and what God commanded. And so the failure of chapter 3, even though apparently and in a very real way and literally, is first and foremost the failure of the woman. The woman saw 1, 2, 3, 4. The woman reached out and picked the fruit. The woman ate and then gave her husband. Yet, when you come to read Romans 5 in verse 12, what are we told? Now, just as sin entered the world through one woman, and death through sin. He doesn't say that. He said sin entered the world through one man. Adam is the one held responsible. Because he's the leader. And so here's what I urge ladies. Yeah, Romans 5:12. Here's what I urge ladies. You know, there is this whole thing of how we look at things. Either look at the glass as being half empty, or you can look at it as being half full. So people look at this arrangement by God, and here's what they say, oh God, oh, you are so unfair. You just decided to put the man over like this. Now that is looking at the glass as half full, isn't it? Now why don't you look at it this way? Because God has set up the man as the leader. He bears ultimate responsibility. I am protected. I am safe. And so here's what I normally advise women. Generally speaking, I know there are exceptions where the law of God is directly involved. When there's a disagreement between you as a woman and your husband, you're trying to decide on a matter, and you really know you are right in this matter. You know your husband is wrong. Generally and ordinarily, let him have his way. Just do it. Because your task as a woman is to make the best available, the best advice you can available to your husband. And argue it as robustly as you can. And when there's a hung jury, you can't agree, don't insist to be the decider. Because then there is no safety for you. When it is the man who then decides, God does not hold you responsible for that decision. Makes sense? Yeah. Because he's the leader. You see this, for example, when the scriptures in the New Testament put forward the arguments for, the qualifications for who becomes an elder. He must have command of his household. Right? He must have his wife and children in subjection. So here's the case. You have a wife who is a rule. And everybody can tell, Makoto si yako. Okay? Yeah. Or you've got kids who are throwing stones at people and hurling curses and insults at everybody. And it's just clear that your household is out of control. And really, if we investigate the matters, we can see that you have done the best you can. You've really done the best you can. But they still turned out this way. And there was every evidence that you gave it your all. You still are not qualified to be an elder. Even then. Why? Because you take responsibility, right, for the failures of you. Now, I'm not saying this so that women can be careless and so on, but I'm saying that that gives you a different perspective of how you look at how God organized these things. That you are to be submitted to a man protects you from taking certain decisions which God did not create you to take. You know, sometimes, even in let me make a political illustration. We have our president, don't we? And it's easy, by the way, and I'm sorry that I do this sometimes, maybe many times. Okay? Because I'm a very politically minded person. I like to analyze politics in my own free time. Don't be hurt. Okay? Anyways, so I said this, oh, President, da, 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 and I say that. But the point is, it's easy sometimes to just look at the president and look at the government and look at what they're doing and criticize it, rubbish it, kasongo, zakayo, bure kabisa, sio? That's easy. But you see, you don't sit in that cabinet, do you? You don't know how much Kenya owes. You don't get those emails and letters from IMF and World Bank, right? You don't get that. You don't have teachers banging your door. We want salaries. And the doctors are threatening to strike. And nearly 40% of our income goes to paying debt. You don't get those. Yeah, but somebody has to sit down somewhere and make those decisions so that you then can go to a mandamano and oppose them. It's easy. And the point is sometimes we don't think like that. Those who are given those responsibilities, they have a hard time. They have a hard time. Because there are things God will hold President Ruto to account about that he will never hold me to account. If there's a famine in Kenya, and something could have been done that wasn't done, right? God won't hold me accountable. If to the failure of planning, God will hold him accountable. And so in that sense, I'm glad I'm not president. Okay? I'm glad I don't have to sit in those offices, making those. So God in his wisdom raises people and apportions them where they are. And if only as sisters, as ladies, we would look at it that way. That the fact that God ordained for me to be here, how much benefit am I getting? Is it not for my good? And so, while on the face of it, it might appear that, oh, Adam is getting all the best cards. All the best cards is falling on him. Implicitly, and much later, very explicitly, Adam has to bear responsibility. He has. Okay. But all I'm trying to add here is, whether you agree with God or not, that's a different matter. But what you cannot deny is that God is very deliberate, very purposive, that in this relationship there is going to be some order, and that order is such that the man will lead, the woman will follow, right? It's clear. Very clear. Isn't it therefore interesting that when the enemy comes to tempt, his strategy is to undermine that very order, isn't it? So he's not a fool. Because we are told in verse 6, that when the woman was eating, picking that fruit and eating, her husband was right there. When the serpent came, he saw two people. And he knows exactly the order that God has ordained. And he deliberately bypasses the man and targets the woman. The temptation began before it began. All right? Yeah. The temptation started before a shot was fired. By the sheer choice of who to target. And the moment Eve opened her mouth to give an answer, while her husband was there, the battle was lost. Yeah. Because the God-ordained order has been shattered. Isn't it therefore interesting that when she actually gives the answer, right? Did God actually say it? Janja. He doesn't just come and say, oh, you please eat. No, he doesn't. Satan never told the woman, eat this tree. He never mentioned those words. He didn't utter those, take it. No. At least later on, he'll tell Jesus, if you're the Son of God, pick and eat. He never said to Eve such words. He simply asked a question, did God say, you shall not eat of any tree? Because there's mischief there. And we'll look at this tomorrow morning when we consider how Adam fared under the covenant of works. We'll evaluate this text. And the woman answers, no, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. So far, so good. But God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden. So far, so good. Then she adds her own things. Neither shall you touch it. Where did God say that? Where did God say that? Neither shall you touch it? No, God never said that. Okay? Now, this is speculation, which ordinarily is never good. But Adam knows exactly what he had. And he was responsible to correct this. We're not told that he did. Right? So even the answer the woman gives is not exactly what God said. She distorts God's word. She adds to it. So then, the temptation happens, like I said. Satan simply, once he's heard what the woman says, she proposes an opposite of what the woman said. No, okay, not quite. God actually knows that if you eat this, you will be like him. Never added it. So eat not. God knows if you do, you shall be like him. You will know good and evil. So she has to make up her mind what she would do with that information. Here's the information. What to do with it is up to you, okay? So the woman now decides she's going to be the one making the decisions. So the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was a delight to the eye. Suddenly the tree becomes attractive. It was to be desired to make man wise. And all up until this point, surely, if you've taken into account what has been going on, the way God has been setting up the stage for the headship of the man, and this conversation goes on, and what is being said is being said, yeah? The question is being directed to the wrong person, it's put even wrongly. The woman adds her own things. She sits down thinking and deliberating and arriving at a decision. Where is the man? Where is the man? That question must be asked even today. So we have collapsed families, failed marriages, and a street children's epidemic. The question we must be asking is, where is the man? Oh, we have illegitimate children. No. We have illegitimate parents. Okay? And irresponsible fathers. That's what we have. But at the heart of it, when society breaks down, ultimately when the hammer falls, it has to be at the desk of the man. Where are you? Or where were you? When all this is happening, where is that? Now the woman is stretching her hand and touching the fruit, plucking it. In the journey to her mouth, she eats. And the journey from her mouth to the mouth of her husband, or to the hand of her husband. Where is Adam? Isn't it interesting then that when you come to verses 8 onwards, and they hear the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, called to the man, Adam. And it is Adam who is asked, where are you? That is the question. So we imagined it in the earlier context. God verbalizes it in this context. The question is directed to Adam. Now, the failure that Adam has displayed throughout come to the fore in the answer he gives. Where are you? Oh, I heard a sound in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Oh, he said, who told you that you're naked? Have you eaten? See, God confronts Adam. Now, didn't God know it was Eve who started? God knows. But Eve is not after. Eve will be talked to from verse 14. Is it 14? Yeah, from verse. Just a minute. Yeah, yeah, from verse 16. No, from 16. From verse 16. 15 is talking to the devil. Yeah. So God is concerned with Adam. Now you understand the implications of the setup God made in chapter 2, isn't it? Adam was set up as a leader, not so that he can go chest thumping like a silverback gorilla. They say, have you seen how most gorillas behave? So that's not why God set you up as a leader. No. I am the man. No. When God set you up that way, He made you responsible. And we don't have responsible men anymore. That's a tragedy. And so as I was angry with the ladies who questioned God for not making them the head or even at least equal, we're going to be equally angry with the men. Because if there's breakdown in society, it is because of you. You've not taken charge. You know, I've had some failures in my family. Some very late. And sometimes they're there. And I own up to it. This was my failure. Okay? This is my failure. So don't go back passing. No. If there's failure, there's mine. Ultimately. Because it's my job to rein it in. It's my job to insist on things. So men, I've got to step up. Okay? I'm not saying we'll be violent. I'm not saying we'll be rude. But I'm saying being the head means being the head. It means giving direction. So God confronts not the woman first, but the man. And then the failures of the man in the previous context now come to the fore. When he's asked, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the fruit of the tree that I commanded you not to eat? And what are the first words that fall from the mouth of the man in verse 12? The woman. Really? The woman. This is a serious problem. Yeah. So why don't we have food in the house? The woman. How comes kids' school fees haven't been paid? I'm sorry, but let me say this. You know, there's a phenomenon that families are going to make decisions and stuff. I understand that. But as a man, you are the head of that house. You must provide for that house. But nowadays, we've got families where and sometimes maybe there's a reason here and a reason there. But when the chips are down, you're the man, you sit back home and you send your wife to Saudi Arabia to go and be tortured. We know what happens then, for the most part. And stories that come from there. And I sent my wife there, and I'm remaining here. Oh, there are no jobs. I will go into jail. I will go and ask for somebody whose toilet is full. I will get into that pit. And I'll get that done out to get food for my family. But I'm not shirking my responsibility. I will not expose my wife to the dangers out there. Do I know what happens to my wife? And I'm not talking about sexual abuse even here. I'm just talking about the insults and the racism that she has to go through outside of my protection for 2 years. It's not going to happen. It's not happening. No chance. But are we not comfortable? We are comfortable. And we celebrate. So, she's there doing, then you go up on the day and upload. Well, it's not a thing for me. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Yes. I said it. Okay? Now, I'm not making a comment as to whether women can work or not. I'm making a comment on the responsibility of the man. Okay? The man has to be responsible. I'm not even talking about temporary situations. For example, where a man is working and his wife may also be working, okay? And then the man loses his job. I'm not saying that if that happens, tell you have to also resign. I'm not saying that. But I'm talking about a mindset, isn't it? Yeah. A mindset of a man who relaxes and is quite comfortable. No. So you see, there's implications here. Yeah. Our time is far gone. But I think I've made the case, isn't it? Yeah. So let me finish this by pointing you to some few other things. Because the point I'm making here is that the creation of man as male and female is deliberate and purposive. It's not accidental. It's intentional. So the man says, the woman. And the woman points her fingers on the serpent. And then God begins with the serpent. And then God comes to the woman. So I wanted to look at the sanctions of God for the woman. Ladies, please listen to this very carefully. So the woman, when the judgments or the sanctions are announced, not so much sanctions, but the actual implementation of the sanctions are announced to the woman in verse 16. It says, the woman is saying, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth your children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Now, obviously, the whole idea of a painful childbirth, that's there. But what I'm interested in terms of the thought we're trying to develop is the second part. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. There's an interesting passage that is capable of one of two interpretations. If you choose to connect this one immediately to the preceding, I will multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth your children. And then your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Then people have looked and said, oh, this is sexual desire, okay? Yeah. That even though the woman atakuwa anazaa kwa tabu sana, the woman will be giving birth in pain, yet she will always desire her husband. Is it not true that the desire is both ways? Yeah, is it? So, the sexual desire of a woman to her husband, that cannot be a curse. Can it? And it cannot be a curse because it is ordained by God. That's how they were going to fill the earth. Eh? So, I highly doubt that it is sexual desire that is being pronounced here as though it is a curse. Because sexual desire is not a curse either way. It's not. But I think that these two should be taken separately, and then the third line be taken along with the fourth line. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Now, there's another place in the Bible where we find almost the exact same phrase, almost word for word. And I think we need to see how that one works out there. Cain has just murdered Abel. Okay, no, he hasn't. They just offered the sacrifices. Cain is jealous. He's burning with rage against his brother. His rage is becoming murderous. And God goes ahead to warn him. Yeah, God goes ahead to warn him. So chapter 4 of Genesis, verse 6 and 7. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? If you do well, verse 7, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, hear these words, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you. Almost same words. Eh? And you must rule over it. Same words. Eh? Yeah. In other words, sin desires you. You must overrule it. In other words, you must defeat it. So, the desire of sin here is sin would like to overthrow Cain, right? Cain must not allow sin to overthrow him. Cain must suppress. And the language is very violent, especially if you consider its implications for the New Testament. Our battle against sin is described in warring times. Yeah, you kill the body, you beat the body, you put it under, you put to death. It's violent language. That's what you find in Genesis 3. The battle of the sexes. That's the beginning of it. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Now, I think what God is saying here is, right from Genesis 3, Eve has acted out of step turn after turn after turn, isn't it? Doing things she is supposed to be doing. And Adam has allowed it. And God is saying, yeah, that's not the trend. A woman's attempt to usurp the authority of her husband. Okay? That is going to be a constant desire, questioning it, wanting it. Why should he be the one? Why not me? Why is he leading? Your desire shall be to overthrow him, to do to Adam what sin was going to try to do to Cain. What was Cain to do? Suppress him. Knock his head. Okay? And he shall rule over you. Now, the rule here is a tough term, isn't it? Earlier on, leadership was presupposed, isn't it? A benevolent rule. Here, it is rule in the context of a struggle. She wants to rule and yeah? Now, God, of course, is not condoning violence here, that we should beat our wife. He's not saying that. But he's saying that there's going to be this struggle between man and woman.
Our time is up, huh?
I know.
Okay.
So here's the bombshell. I mentioned earlier that you're a woman and you detest this idea of male leadership, of male authority, of male priority. You are of the Beijing Conference kind, 1995. You are of the egalitarian ilk, the equality of the sexes. What a man can do, a woman cannot do. That's a curse. That's the bombshell, isn't it? That's a curse. That's why I said, if you think like that something is seriously wrong with you, now I'm telling you what's seriously wrong with you. You are exhibiting the outworks of the curse of God on Eve. And so rather than compete with your husband for authority, compete to suppress your urge to have his authority. That's what the battle should be. Yeah. When the woman is you, in you is right. I said the woman in me is rising against my man. You put her down. Say no, this is not God's desire. So my point then is, right from creation to the way God orders all these things up until now, to the way the curse works itself out, it is fairly clear that God was very deliberate and very particular and very purposeful in creating man as male and female, and then establishing an essential equality both as image bearers of God, yet God establishing a clear order in their relationship. Right? One must lead and the other must follow. Now tomorrow morning I should argue this maybe for 10 or 15 minutes But that arrangement necessarily implies or necessarily means that these two cannot have the same role. That there is this ordering means that there are particular roles that belong to the man, and there are particular roles that belong to the woman. And that is true in the family, that is also true in the church. That may not be necessarily true in the world because we're dealing with a fallen world, but in that microcosm of a restored humanity, which is the church, the order of God must be seen. Yeah. So I've done that heavy work now. When we come to ecclesiology, I should have an easier one. So when we read 1 Timothy, you must be the husband of one wife. You don't ask me so many questions there, because I think I've made the case. Okay. So I think